Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. And I'm back again with another Tower of God video. And this time we're on the walk up from episode 101 to 110. Now this has a lot of key moments in it, and it has a lot of these delayed multi-piece analysis of a single fight. So you will get a lot of dead air from myself in this section particularly. The heated fights generally are going to be like that. I haven't given a warning about it previously, but in other chapters where the fights get intense, I end up switching between scenes very quickly, and I don't have much to describe besides the fact that they're still fighting. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to try and gloss through it and keep going. So we start off 101 with Madarako and two of the Pug Rankers, and they decide that they're going to go ahead with their plan and wrap up the workshop battle, allowing Rafleo to play out his final round however he wishes, and they're going to basically melt Balm into the thorn so they can give it to their Slayer God. We then see that the travelers are being caught as they try to get towards Emily, and we see that the traveler who we first met with, Balm, is on his way in, and he gets the furthest. He actually gets all the way to the chamber where Cassino is. At this point, we end up going back to Balm, and he's in the fight with Rafleo. He manages to sneak up in the back, and Rafleo ends up putting his hostage in the way to stop any and all assaults from Balm. Now, the reason is quite simple. He needs to play with the hostage because Balm is way too overpowered for him to handle. Even at B rank level, he knows that Balm has the advantage because Balm can tie with the Ranker. So that would put Balm in the upper A class of individuals and in the lower class of Rankers previously 10 floors below this. So Balm's level right now is most probably way more crazy. He's gone through the roof, and he's about to have a power up in the form of the Thorn. Now as he powers up, his ability to draw with a Ranker will become his ability to defeat a Ranker. And once he can defeat a Ranker, he no longer will tie with the lowest level Rankers. He'll start to climb into the Ranker levels. And once he reaches into the Hell Train and he ends up completing his training, he's actually in the mid-range Rankers all the way to tying with an advanced Ranker. And by the time we catch up to him in Season 3, he is all the way in the high Ranker level, all the way to beating the top tier Rankers. He's that crazy powerful by the end of season, not by the end, by the start of Season 3, he's actually at that level. And he isn't done. In Season 3, we're expecting him to take power up upon power up and reach crazier levels than he's ever been to before. We then see that he's trying to use reverse flow control on Rafleo, and it won't work because Rafleo is using that special ability of the shadows to make his flow control irregular. And he basically explains that he's been turned into a shadow and that you can't control it because it doesn't have a uniform control. And he explains that after he's done using his power, he'll die. So he's basically sacrificed himself to do this here. Then we see Rafleo starts drawing out another shadow power, and this time Balm draws out multiple Bang to take it on, and he ends up uniting it for a single blow. It's one of the irregular flow controls, so it really is something that he hasn't seen before. And we see that Rafleo is taking full advantage of the fact that he wouldn't normally be able to even stand in this fight. It's just that he has a hostage that is giving him this edge. And he's also aware that Balm could get even more crazy the moment that needle on his back unravels and the thorn allows him to use power. And then we see that Kun hatches a plan to actually defeat him, and that's the end of 101. Now we'll get into 102, and this chapter actually has multiple pieces of very strong information. We then catch up with Cassino as he is basically extracting Emily into the vessel that he got from Madarako. And we then see that it's a compression vessel, so that's what they're doing. They're putting all of Emily into that simple little container so they can move it. And Cassino explains that this is Emily, and we see that Cassino explains how she was formed, and that she was actually once a living ignition weapon, and then she was turned into this fluid, this weapon. And we see that they've been using Emily in multiple ways to get what they want. Their goal is to recruit as many people as possible using Emily, and they've also been helped by the merchant group from Fug. So we see that he explains the whole situation, and that he wonders whether Emily actually knew that she was a weapon, or whether she still thinks that she's a human trapped in some kind of form. And we see that Cassino wants to bring change to the tower using Emily's power. And we see that he keeps moving, and we see what he ended up doing to Cassino, to Ilma earlier when he was with him. So he told Ilma to come with him, and he refused to. At which point he extracted the devil from within Ilma and left him for just about dead. Then we see it switches back to Khun and Rak, and they're basically going through their plan. And we see that Khun decides to check up what type of spear he bought, and he sees the Mad Shocker. And we see that they have a plan to beat him quickly. They're going to use their items from the workshop to actually take him out. And we see that Rafleo isn't actually planning to beat them. He just wants to hold them there long enough for the solution to be poured in. Obviously the Archimedes is delayed, but the Rankers are about to cheat and interfere with things. And we see that Rak throws the Mad Shocker, which instinctively pushes Waryun in place. And we see that Khun dives right in with his white heavenly mirror, and he stabs Waryun through the heart. At which point we see the most awesome thing, and that is we see the thorn unraveling. So it starts to open, and that is where 102 ends. Now there are some things you need to understand about the thorn, which we learn later on in this season, and we find out that there's more pieces that need to be united. We then see Khun stab the hostage, and everybody's wondering whether he just killed her to get her out of the way. Rafleo even thinks that he killed the hostage, and then we see that she's absorbed into his blade, the white heavenly mirror. One of the 3 magical abilities of the mirror is it can compress and seal someone who's been stabbed through the heart with it. And as you heard, it has 3 powers, so we only know of this one. Then we see Rafleo switches to a very assault heavy technique, because he needs to kill them all very quickly now that he doesn't have protection against bomb. And then we see the thorn unravels itself in that scene. We then get Shia looking after Ilma's body, and she's thinking about what she should do, and she thinks about everything carefully, and she's thinking whether she should take the money or help them, whether she should work with Viol or not. We then see that it swaps over to Hudson and Rossi, and Hutch decides that he's going to change up his plan. He's going to start attacking, and he expresses he'll beat them with his new sword, and We see that and Rossi looks at him like that's just a pipe, doesn't understand what he's doing. And we see that Hutz has a reason to be angry, and they decide to pull their things together and they work out their strategy. And we see that Rossi takes a little bit of a rage that she has towards Rachel out on Ron Mai because she's also a blondie traitor. And we see that things are getting real heavy. We see that Hutz goes through with his pipe and he slices through an attack that came out from Baragrav. He then makes a single hit onto Baragrav, and we see that Rossi uses it as her advantage to grab him from the back and fly him straight up to a high point and smash him down to see which one has more power, her full force kick or his blood Tamara. And they use that as their advantage. We then see Bam in the fight with Rafleo, and the Thorn has fully released. Obviously he hasn't cut his hair yet, this is later, and that is where the episode ends at 103. So we're getting on to 104. This section is really cool and entertaining to watch through. We see the needle has opened and Bam starts feeling this odd power. He says it feels similar to the fake, but something is different, and he decides to go at it. He jumps onto the same stage as Rafleo. Now that Rafleo doesn't have a hostage, he can't just block. We then see that on the Archimedes, they've started to wrap up most of the stuff, and we see that Ender Rossi makes a sign of what she's doing, and everybody can see what she did. So everybody on the ship is now worried because everybody is now alerted to that things are going on. And we see that Rafleo did the big mistake of underestimating an irregular. He decides to say he's just an E-rank regular rookie. Now here's one thing to note. Bam may be a E-rank regular, and they may consider him to be weak in that sense, but he is in no way weak. He is crazy powerful, and once they pass the 30th floor, they make it to D rank regulars. Obviously D rank continues for some ways till they reach C rank, then C rank turns to B rank once you're in the 80s in terms of floor count, and once you beat the 80s and you enter into the 90s, you end up with your A rank regulars, and then you change into a ranker when you finish your climb. We then see that Rafleo decides he's going to test Vio to see if he's worthy of the power. And we see that through the Thorn, he all of a sudden can control even the irregular flows of Shinsu. It's actually enhanced his Shinsu control. And we see Bam hit Rafleo straight into a wall. And we see that he used reverse flow control on Rafleo. And we see that it has the ability to dominate the Shinsu in the area around it. And we see that it's godlike power. It's almost on the same level as administrators, which makes it crazy. Then we see Rafleo looks over at Bam and he wonders whether he could defeat him, and we see he goes through his own story in his head a little bit, and he's thinking about how Bam has that power, and he thinks that he's undeserving and it must go to one who is truly qualified. And we see that Rafleo decides to go at it again with Bam, and Bam says he's not a god. And he says that Rafleo's god is delusional, born of weakness, and that Rafleo is arrogant. And we see that they go for another set of attacks, and this time everybody assaults. They even manage to throw Rafleo off his balance, and then all of a sudden and we see that it switches back and forth. At this point we see Enderossi's kick off Baragrav is taken off, and we see that finally Balm lands attack on Rafleo, shattering his mask, and that is where episode 104 ends. Now 105 is about to start, and things are a bit crazy. We see that Baragrav has been sent back onto the Archimedes. We see that Io and Punk didn't understand that the tournament had continued, even though they thought they had suspended it. Then we see Madarako thinking, oh well, it's not so bad, Rafleo just failed, we can sort this out our own way, and the rankers go and intervene. We then see Balm is in some pain and he's struggling a lot because of that Thorn's power, and it's really heavy. And we see that Kun wonders how crazy the Thorn will be. If it already has the power of a B rank regular when it's just contributing and not in full force, imagine what it would be like if the full power was released. We get to see that later in the same season, basically in season 2 in the Hell Train, and we get to see a lot of it as things go on. We then see Rafleo's face with his eyes carved out, and we see that this was a punishment for him for looking on one of the princesses of Jahad. Just for a single glance, his entire tribe was killed and his eyes were gouged out. And he wondered if people were worthy of having such crazy powers. Then we see that he explains that they're going to be melted down, and that the rankers from Pug are going to break the rules and pour the molten solution into the arena immediately. We then see that Baragrav is forced to surrender as Huts takes his friend hostage in the form of Ranmai, and Huts explains that it's fair play, they've taken hostages, so they're allowed to do the same. And we see that Baragrav was actually out of it. He was already injured from that massive strike that he took, so his Blood Tamara's ability to handle him was actually over. And we see that Huts explains that soon they're going to be the strongest D rank regulars, and if they want to challenge them, they can meet them there and they can lose at that point. And then we see the solution being pulled over to the island, and that they're planning to basically do their own thing at this point. We then see the end of the Rafleo and Balm fight. We then see Shibisu saying that there's a trap being sprung on them, and that the solution was about to be poured in on them. And we see that the rest of the team haven't found any hostages, at which point Shia gives them the teammates, and they decide they're going to leave. And we see that Enderossi is complaining that Bong Bong isn't working, and everybody needs to get out of there before that solution is poured in and it melts everybody away. We then see that Anak just wants to get out of there. She's being impatient like normal. We see that Quant wants to get out as well. He's just as much a baby as her. And we see that the solution is being poured into the cave illegally, so 105 ends there and we end up on 106. We see that a Fag ranker is pouring it in, and now Liraro is orders them to start the engine, and they decide they're going to take the fight to the Rancor. We see that things are going crazy inside as the entire place starts melting down. And we see that Io and Punk confront Madarako, and they say that he betrayed them, and he explains that he also sold the container for Emily to somebody else because they broke their stuff by suspending the tournament. We see that they tried to hide their corruption and their involvement with Madarako, so they not actually live broadcasting. So if they get killed here, nobody's gonna know. And their great teacher isn't here to protect them. And the teachers are the members of the workshop who look after each division or branch. And they supposedly some very powerful individuals, but we haven't run into any of them. And we might run into them later down the line because I'm suspecting they're in the top 50 rankers, most of them. And then we see that Fug is getting help from rankers against regulars, which make things really crazy. We then see Quant basically takes on this Rancor with the ship, and we then see that Liroro attacks the Fug Rancor, which delays them on some time. We then see that everybody is making their way out and trying to escape as fast as possible. Vespa is taking the other regulars out, and everybody is rushing to make their way around. We see that Liroro is fighting this Rancor without a lighthouse, and he is a light bearer, so things are crazy. We then see that Hatsling is feeding the information from what's going on to others. We then see that the area to where Reflejo is blocked off for Huts and Rossi, and then we see that she figures out that she could power 8 off the workshop power packs that they wear for their weapons. And then we see Reflejo is acting all satisfied that everybody's gonna die with him. Then we see Reflejo is knocked down and he falls into that liquid solution, and Ender Rossi and Hut shows up and they save the other 3 inside there, who also have Waryun with them, and that's how they make it out of there. At this point we see Madarako being approached by somebody in a white coat and who has a cigarette. At this point everything ends there, and we see that Bong Bong is making its escape from that little solution. That's 106 end. And we'll start off with 107. Now this is crazy. At this point we see Madarako look, and he realizes who's there with him, and we see that Varagrav is making away with Ron Mai, and we see that Varagrav was once a Slayer nominee and that he wanted the position for himself. That's why he's been here. And after this year we see that Ender Rossi and all of the others make it out, and they all feeling really roughed up from Ender Rossi's driving with her Bong Bong, and we see that everybody else makes it out as well on Vespa, who's decompressed. And we see Quant telling them that they need to get out of there before the rankers discover them, at which point one of the Fug rankers show up, We see Quant and Leraro and the other Fug ranker have their crazy fight in the air. Then we see that Quant is told to stop that ranker at all costs. Then we see that Madarako gives them the order to leave immediately, because if they don't, the man who just showed up to help them will destroy their business trade completely. And we see that all the Fug rankers decide to return, and they turn away from it. And finally, these guys escape, at which point we see Madarako saying, yeah, he remembers who this is, and Gustang basically says that he's happy to see this and he needs to put the correct stuff up, and he says the winner of the workshop battle is, and we see Team Sweet and Sour, and everybody's names are listed from Sweet and Sour as being the winners, and they get to make off. And we see how he comments on everything, and we see that he is one of the 10 family heads at this point, and that is when we introduce the fact that he is Pobadao Gustang. We see that all the regulars are all comfortable in their Wulayuk Song area, and that is where 107 ends. We'll then get on to 108. Now, you have to understand that the workshop battle section still hasn't ended. We got more to go through at this point. We see Kun, Rak, and Viol together. They're all enjoying themselves. We then see Wagnan in his nightmare, as his color is changed in his own nightmare, and then he wakes up screaming. And Yua is looking after him. And we see all of the craziness that unfolds there. We even see Huryang is in a bed. And we see Wagdan is super happy about everything, and he's feeling like it's such a relief. We also see that Yua notices his ring, and after that they basically told to come outside. Everyone is worried about him. We then see that they call Wagnan the hero of the workshop battle, and basically they go on saying that he's the leader of Team Sweet and Sour. And Wagnan wonders why his old friends aren't taking Balm with him and completing their climb up the tower, and Shibisu explains they're already D-rank regulars, and they can't really go up the tower with Balm right now because they have to catch up, and then their team can start mixing with all of their old friends. Then we see that he plays a joke saying that his chest is hurting. And we see that Bulrad, Cheng, and Quattro are following both Wagnan and Viol to see what's going on. We then see that Iwa is also wondering what's up with Wagnan because he should have been dead. We then see the Wulayuk Song guys are all gathered together and they're having a big meeting. We see that everything was covered up about the Archimedes story, so Pobadao Gustang got involved. And we see that nobody understands what's going on, and we see that Hatzling is thinking that if Yuri found out, his lifespan would definitely get shortened very quickly. We then see that Wulayuk Song had a spare D-rank regular, Tolalan, whose whole idea is to get onto the Hell Train. And we find out that Wulayuk Song has a lot of stories they're trying to work out on the side. We then see that they're talking about the express for D-rank regulars called the Hell Train, and something they're referring to as the Hidden Floor. And we see that a lot of them start talking about it, and basically we see they express once again that Balm is a regular. Not a regular, it is a real massive power and irregular. And they explain that the next time that the Hell Train goes on, there's going to be a monster who might board it, and that is going to be Bam. And then we see that things switch over to Karaka because he was responsible for this, and his palace is on the 97th floor. So his secret lair is invaded by Jin Sang Ha, and he is there to invade in the end of episode 108. We get to episode 109. We then see that Jin Sang Ha assaults and opens up everything. He blasts everybody through and he just starts smashing all of Karaka's minions. Finally, he walks up to Karaka and he has a little conversation with Karaka, and he says that he shouldn't be targeting the Slayer candidate. And Shea is also perplexed, and that he should be careful because if he keeps messing with the irregular, he might be pulling him down out of that seat that he's sitting in. And we see the Jahad ring which Wagner has on Karaka's hand at this point. And we see that Jin Sang Ha also explains Viol has a crazy growth spur. Unlike Karaka, who's been growing at a good rate, if he decides to mess with Viol, Viol might end up killing him, basically, he said, in the near future when he returns to Fug. And then we see that Karaka plans on the Hell Train, and that he still is after that needle, and he didn't heed the warning that he was given. We then get back to the resort, and we see Enderossi is waiting for a date with Viol, and we see that all the other regulars are keeping an eye on it. We see Yua is worried about Bam being with another girl. You see Prince is totally jealous that Bam has Enderossi on his finger, and we see Rak is worried that Enderossi will do something stupid, and Kun is just watching over them and saying that they shouldn't be bothering them so much. And we see that Enderossi drags Bam on a date, and then we see Kun gets together with the others. We see that Ran and Novik are together with Dan, and they're talking, and basically Kun says that they're going to be a backup team and they'll be working together on the climb up the tower. So Kun is going to go join up with Team Sweet and Sour, and that they're going to be the backup team, and basically they explain that they're a few members short, at which point we see that their team is actually 4 members. So they can always get 4 random members to fill in, and they're really good. They have Sheshia as their light bearer, they have Dan as their scout, and then they have Novik and Ran who are playing their respective positions. We then see Bam and Enderossi's date. It's not really so important, but it does give little hints about everything. And then we see that Enderossi fell for Bam a long time ago, and we see that she sees the same things that she fell in him that are still there. And we see that she decides that she wants to get away from the 3 who are stalking her. That's Yiwa, Prince, and Rak, and she just uses the bong bong to get away. Then we see Enderossi expressing the standard flow of what you'd expect from a spoiled princess, that she's going to use up all of his money in the end and when he goes shopping with her later. And we see her looking at his face, and she remembers exactly what she loved about him, that special character within him. And then we end up switching over to Rachel's group, and we see that their group is comprised of a 4-man team, and the 2 of them are joining. It's now Casino and Traveler, and in the team is Rachel, Apple, Michael, and they have one other individual with them there, and that is the end of episode 109. The other individual with them is actually Angel. So we see Rachel welcoming them in, And we see that Traveler sees that something is weird about them. We see Michael, we see them talking about the fact that they're going to rescue the tower from its fate. And then 3 days later from the resort, we see the departure of Enderossi's team, the princess team basically. We see that everybody is getting along and they're all having fun with their conversations and they're all friends. So we know that the whole lot of them are all together. And we see that although Yurik intended to meet them over here, he ended up caught in some other problems that he caused, and he is actually stuck in it, which we find out is all on the floor of death. And we see that Kun explains he doesn't want to get on the bad side of Yurik if it's at all possible. We then see that Goaseng calls them and that they worried about Huriang, that something is wrong with him. And this is where things get crazy, and this is why the rush to the Hell Train is so important. We find out that the devil from within Huriang was taken away, and that's how come he's in the state. And then we see that Casino has one perfect devil within him, and he's using it to make himself even more powerful. And we see that Beta is explaining that he's not a perfect whole, he actually has multiple pieces of different ignition weapons inside him. And he explains that things are going to be really difficult because they're going to get more powerful as he goes along with that complete power. Is going to be something closer to what Balm is. So they basically explain that they need to find Casino and get the devil out of him so that they can reunite it with Ilma. And then they also explain that Fug has Emily. And they don't know what they're going to use her for, but she is also a living ignition weapon. And up until now, they sealed her away by making her believe she was a human being. But with the protections being disabled, they don't know what she is capable of if she ignites, because she could do some really crazy things. And they basically explain that there's a huge issue, and at this point they wonder if there's anything they can do. And at this point Balm says there's somebody in the mirror who could help, and they realize that it can't be helped and that Pug is going to be involved again, and they really didn't want Pug to get involved all over again. And then we see that Warrior Yun is here just to help Balm, and she explains there's a special test for D rank regulars on the 35th floor of the tower. It's called the Hell Train, and it goes up till the 43rd floor of the tower, so they get to do 8 floors in a year on the Hell Train. And basically this is where all the craziness starts. So she explains to them they need to make their way up there, get on the train, and that they're going to need to become even stronger to face the dangers of the train, because there's something on the train which is super deadly, and even Viol won't survive if he had to go on in the state he is now. He's going to have to become stronger. We then see the departure of Shibisu's team, and we then see Warrior talking to everybody. We see Rachel's team departing. We then see that everybody was wondering why no action was taken about what happened with the Archimedes, and nobody really cared. And then we see Rachel give a little narration that a new story shall begin. And we see that she's someone that cannot be controlled nor guided, and she's a different type of existence in the tower. We then see Viol cut his hair and Balm is back, and that is the end of the workshop battle, and that ends it at 110. Now let's go through all of this here. The end of the workshop battle basically put Balm on a path that if he wants to save Ilma, he has to get onto the Hell Train. If he doesn't get onto the Hell Train and save save Ilma, then he's gonna let one of his friends die. But if he gets onto the Hell Train, it's a whole dangerous adventure, and he's gonna need to get a lot more powerful just to get on and be able to cope with it. This is what Bomb looks like at the end of it, basically. And we basically get this whole hint that things are about to go way off the script. We then have the prologue to the Hell Train that's going to come in the next few chapters. And from everything that happened, we see that Gustang was watching over everything. He didn't intend to have Bomb killed. When Bomb managed to overcome his problems, he decided to intervene and help him out a little bit, because rankers versing regulars isn't really that fun of a thing to watch. Plus the fact that the regulars have been pushed through hell and back. So he didn't want to push him to his absolute limit. Plus he had the thorn, and he didn't want to see the thorn ignite and go crazy and end up destroying everything in the area. He may have wanted to see its power, but he didn't want it to go that way. It still is one of his best friend's children, so he didn't want to see anything bad happen to him. So we then see that Gustang had a lot of a human side. We don't know what's the other motives behind it, but we will get to see it later in the story. Not even now have we seen the full motives. So yeah, that is everything that we need to know. We then see Rachel was trying up her plan, and then we get the hint that she cannot be controlled, seen, or even understood as to what she's going to do. So her whole side is explained on that path. And that is where everything ends for us in the tower. That is our cutoff point, and from here on out, we're going to have to figure out what goes on in the next stage. So catch you all in the next one, and have a great day.